This podcast was brought to you by Dr. Kirk Elliott, PhD. In an uncertain economy, if you're looking for wealth management solutions and financial advice, go to kirkelliottphd.com and make an appointment today. Coming up, I'll examine the future of the House in the wake of a speaker vacancy. I'll review a detailed article in Newsweek exposing the police agencies of the Biden regime targeting of Trump and the MAGA movement. Republican Congresswoman Victoria Spartz joins me to talk about socialist tyranny she grew up under in Soviet-dominated Ukraine and the reappearance of the police state in Biden's America. Hey, if you're listening on Apple, Google, or Spotify, watching on Rumble, please subscribe to my channel. This is the Dinesh D'Souza Show.
Needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza Podcast.
Who is going to be the next Republican House Speaker? The hats are already coming flying into the ring. There are a bunch of people who are interested. Some of them, and this is also true of the presidential race, candidates who don't really have a chance. Tom Emmer, I would not say doesn't have a chance, but I think perhaps it's not likely to be him. Clearly, a lot of the Trump people are against him. So the MAGA people in the House this is a guy who's actually been critical of Trump, and I don't think it's going to be him. Which raises an interesting question. Is it going to be Trump himself? Now, normally I would consider this to be really outlandish, really out there, almost a playful suggestion. But then I turn to Truth Social and I see that Trump posted a photo of himself with the hammer, as if to say, well, maybe. And Trump himself is quite capable of playing around and being ironic. And a lot of times people don't get that about Trump. They go, oh, Trump wants us to be speaker, not recognizing that Trump is sort of taunting the other side by the symbolism. Now, that being said, Trump was asked about this, and he said, well, I'll do what's good for the Republican Party. And that's an interesting statement, because I think Trump may realize that in the interim, this may not be a bad way. If he could get it, if the Republicans say, yeah, let's make it Trump, I mean, what a massive up yours to the left. I mean, here's a guy who's been in all these courtroom trials, under all these indictments, and guess what? He's the Speaker of the House. He is, in fact, the second or third most important person in the country. He is, in fact, the driving force of legislation. I mean, the left would have a hernia over this. So this is alone a reason not to dismiss it. I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know what kind of odds to put on it. It looks to me like the two candidates who are really in the running here are Steve Scalise, the number two man in the House, right behind Kevin McCarthy, or at least that's what his position was, and then Jim Jordan, who is head of the Oversight Committee. Now, both are very influential in the Republican House. Scalise is sort of the next in line. And in the old days, the Republican Party used to be essentially a mechanical, who's next in line? Who's next in line to run for president? Oh, Bob Dole, you're next in line. Okay, well, we don't care if you're a good candidate. We don't care if you're going to be an effective campaigner. We don't care if you can raise money. You're the next person in line, and so it's your turn. Well, we're a long way away from those days. And so I think this time the House is going to be looking to see, well, listen, if we didn't want Kevin McCarthy, or at least if Kevin McCarthy could not effectively lead this group, and I'm not saying this is easy to do, because you've got 220 or so Republicans. They stretch across quite a spectrum. They differ in ideology to some degree. Some sort of, you may say, some more mild or weaker Republicans, other kind of more accented or stronger Republicans. They also differ in temperament. Some are more establishment types. Others are more kind of fire-breathing types. In any event, you got to corral all these guys into a single team with not many votes to lose. I mean, quite precisely, 5 or 6 votes to lose? And if you lose those votes, then the Democrats are able to command an effective majority. So I think it is to Steve Scalise's credit that he has proved to be actually a decent sort of number two man. The problem is if Kevin McCarthy couldn't do it, how will Scalise, who is similar to McCarthy, at least in some ways, will he be the man for the job? Or Jim Jordan. Now, Jim Jordan, I got to say, has also been loyal to McCarthy. When you had this dissident faction led by Matt Gaetz, who did Jim Jordan vote for? McCarthy. That being said, I think that Jim Jordan is conservative in his bones, and he is someone who does command a broad respect, and he's a very affable guy, and this is actually the key. If you think about Reagan, Reagan was philosophically conservative, but he was temperamentally genial, and he was also pragmatic about the way that he went about things. He would have a goal, but if he couldn't get everything, I want a tax cut that is a very steep tax cut, but I can only get half of it right now. I'm going to have to go after the next half in the second term. Reagan is, let's do it. So there's no clash between being philosophical and being pragmatic. Philosophy sets the goal and pragmatism sets the means. We need that kind of leader to take over the helm in the Republican House. If aches and pains are your problem, Relief Factor is your remedy. Debbie and I started taking Relief Factor a couple of years ago, and what a huge difference we've seen in our joints. Nothing short of amazing. Aches and pains are totally gone thanks to this 100% drug-free solution called Relief Factor. Now, how does it work? Relief Factor supports your body's fight against inflammation. That's the source of aches and pains. More than 1 million people have tried Relief Factor, and the vast majority, about 70%, have become regular customers. They've gone on to order more. Debbie's a true believer. She can now do exercises that for a long time she wasn't able to do. So Relief Factor has been a big game changer for her aunt, other members of our family, Mike here in the studio, and for many other people. You too can benefit. Try it for yourself. Order the 3-week quick start for the discounted price of just $19.95. Go to relieffactor.com or call 800-4-RELIEF to find out more about this offer. The number again to call, 800-4-RELIEF, or go to relieffactor.com. Feel the difference. Guys, I'm really happy to welcome to the podcast a new guest, Victoria Spartz. She is a congresswoman who represents Indiana's 5th District. Now, what interests me particularly, she grew up in socialist-controlled Ukraine, emigrated to the United States about 20 years ago, worked her way up from bank teller to CPA, successful business owner, now, of course, member of Congress. Her website, Spartz, spartz.house.gov. Victoria, welcome to the podcast. Really great to have you. And, you seem to have had a really interesting story beginning your life, we'd have to say, in the unfree world, and then coming to the free world, which is now not looking perhaps so free as it used to be. Tell us a little bit about your story, and then let's talk about free and unfree societies.
And thank you for having me. It made me mad and crazy enough to become a politician now that it all sad because unfortunately I don't belong to tyranny, dictatorship, and socialism. And socialism is a tyranny. And I saw what happened in 1991 when Soviet Union fell apart. It was anarchy mob rule. I don't think a lot of Americans realize what it means to live under mob rule when you don't have rule of law. Very tough times, and a lot of things, we're looking out bad at the end of 90s, but you can see that it's very hard to get out from under tyranny. The government is so powerful. For most Soviet republics, only 3 of them, they were always different, became free, and for the remaining one, only Ukraine is still trying to fight and become free, and it's through a lot of bloodshed, and people cannot get the power back. It's very dangerous when police state and tyranny becomes very powerful and controlled by very few on top, then it's very difficult for people to succeed. And I was shocked to see this trends in the United States because I was young, idealistic, and inspired by Milton Friedman, Hayek, and Alexis de Tocqueville.
Well, you mentioned that socialism is a tyranny. And of course, we have lots of people in this country, they say we're democratic socialists. They don't think of themselves as advocates of tyranny. And I think the ordinary American has difficulty understanding what it's like to really live that way. Can you give us some idea of life in the Soviet orbit, what did it mean in terms of what you could and couldn't do, in terms of, let's say, holding a job or traveling, or the kind of things that ordinary Americans take for granted?
Well, democracy can't, exist under socialism because somebody has to decide what is good for you. Well, we're all freedom-loving people, so if somebody's going to tell me what I should do, what I should say, it is going to be a tyranny because, no one knows better than you, what is the best for you or for your children. So the government is telling you to be able to control. They create elites on top, monopolists, we see here, oligarchs, so it's a communist party. It doesn't matter. You have, some people on top live a different life and control everyone, and everyone else is equal and poor. They will give little handouts, make you dependent, people have a very minimal in Soviet Union, and they give you a comfortable enough a place to live. They will give you a set of bread. You might say in line, there's always a shortage, but they want to create shortage because they want to give you something that you will be more accountable and more, oppressed by them. So, if you say something that the government doesn't like, they either use police. If they can't use police, they might put you in a mental health facility, and when they do like your mental, and if they can't do that, sometimes they actually pull out radios, real bandits, to cut out the people, real criminals. So it's use the oppression to be able to control their power. And you weren't afraid to say, you weren't afraid to pray. I had a very religious grandma, but she had to baptize me secretly because they're afraid of people, because religion makes us strong as individual. My predecessor, the land was taken away by communists and they were sent to die in cities. And my grandpa almost died because a lot of Ukrainians own land. And when you own land, can provide for yourself, you are more independent, you are dangerous. They took weapons from people because that is make you strong and free. They don't want you to be very well informed and educated because they want to be able to brainwash you. And this is trends on so fast that happen in our country that people are not afraid, even express their opinion, because if you say something that the machine doesn't like, they can actually try to put you in jail. And that is how the Department of Justice become very, very dangerous. And people are thinking and afraid that their own government can come after you. And that fear is very oppressive and very dangerous.
Victoria, you came to the United States. You met your husband on a train in Europe, almost something that you could make a movie about. You certainly experienced the American dream of opportunity. You came to a country where you could speak your mind. You're saying that now there has been a kind of a dangerous turn. And when did you first observe that happening? Is that a unique feature of the Biden administration, or do you think that the roots of it go further back?
I've looked at that. The roots been for a while, but definitely was picked up under President Obama. I'll tell you, the other side is great. What they do. And I have a child, we all get was to make convictions in a lot of ways, and I do know. They play major league strategic roles, and we do a lot of presentations that always, we're good on the defense, but not as brilliant on the offense. And they advance it very quickly, very smartly. They use, Karl Marx 101, and it works. Unfortunately, it does. And Republicans are doing, not as effective, policy in delivering, and people get frustrated with us. But I actually, I've been involved in that. I have that. Listen, I have young kids from very difficult jobs, but it makes you strong then. It is what are nowadays. It doesn't matter where you came from. You barely speak English. I was new, like a suitcase, but you can pursue whatever you want. And that was still hard work, and people appreciate it. So we still have that on the ground. But I saw how difficult it was difficult. I was involved in Fortune 100 American, a big four, dealing with large corporations, and then my husband is going to be partner and single mom. You need to get back into home. And I felt, I'll do my own businesses. And I thought of my own businesses. And I'm like, OMG. And, educated person, I've done a lot of things. And that's the machine, the federal, state, the local. It's not just the federal government, centralized power even involved. A lot of corrupt and worthless politicians are learning about the ways. They just get very clever how they give you a little handout and attach strings and people not paying attention to what's happening. So I actually got involved. I found my Tea Party organization. I was like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. This is I'm like, it's like extortion, like Russian-style mafia. Like, you bring wrong with what, and I'm reading it. Our lips wrong, and I didn't down in the faint of the cigarette, the pie, the house. But doctor is not true. Father is evil capitalists, so I read from that propaganda. I know the mechanics of it, and I'm like, this is like what is happening in the country, and I think it is very dangerous. Like they get involved, and bring a lot of people in that kind of started paying attention in the conservative movement. So that's how I kind of got involved with politics, like trying to take down bad politicians first.
We'll be right back with Representative Victoria Spartz of Indiana. Her website, Spartz, spartz.house.gov. Last month, the G20 group of countries announced that it welcomed discussions of the effects of implementing central bank digital currencies in those countries. These digital currencies could allow the government to track every purchase you make. They could even allow officials to prohibit you from purchasing certain products or freeze or seize part or all of your money. In essence, they could enable the government to control your finances. Now, concerned Americans are diversifying their assets into physical gold with the help of Birch Gold Group. If you want a physical asset held in a tax-sheltered retirement account, you should call Birch Gold too. Debbie and I are customers. We buy our gold through Birch Gold. But find out for yourself. Text Dinesh to 989898. You'll get a free information kit on gold. No obligation, just information. Now, here's the easiest way to become a Birch Gold customer. If you got an IRA or 401k, maybe from a previous employer, Birch Gold can help you convert it into an IRA in gold, and you don't pay a penny out of pocket. Text Dinesh to 989898. Claim your free information kit on gold. Then call them, because if digital currency becomes a reality, it'll be nice to have some gold to fall back on. I'm back with Congresswoman Victoria Spartz of Indiana's 5th District. Victoria, I'm releasing just later this month a movie called Police State, and it got me thinking about what are the defining characteristics of unfree societies. I'm thinking of North Korea, I'm thinking of Iran, of China, certainly of the old Soviet Union and the Soviet Empire. And I say that those societies have mass surveillance, they have censorship, they tend to be one-party states. Not to say they don't have elections. Iran has elections, but they handpick the opposition. They choose all the candidates. So there's no effective opposition that is allowed. You have political prisoners. You have people who are targeted criminally for being dissidents or for being opposition party members. And I say to myself, wow, I, like you, came to the United States as an immigrant. I thought I was coming to a free society, but a lot of these defining elements of unfree societies we now see right here in the United States. Are you worried that we are losing our basic freedom that we have taken for granted in this country for 200 years?
And it's already long. We should not underestimate growing environment to the tyranny. We should never underestimate some of the people that really have very strategic agenda. I can tell you what they're doing right now. What are they doing? What is this debt, is going to do to the American people? Inflation is going to be destroying middle class and opportunities for low-income people to move into middle class. So you will not now. Much as most people own in their life is a house. It's not just become unaffordable, it will become unachievable. So they want to pass all into apartments and give subsidy to control, because if they take subsidy, you're dependable. They want us to urbanize us because I live on the farm, then I'm independent, I can survive. But then I have infrastructure to provide. So you undermine all of this ownership. As long as they start losing property rights, they even use an EPA and wetlands would be like a communist to take your property rights away and redefine. They make a little, puddle of water, navigable water, so they have a government control. If you touch it, it's a criminal offense. So they try to criminalize ownership of property and try to centralize the power, because if people understand, pure socialism and communism, it's who controls means of production. Well, means of productions and assets are provided with money. If you control money in Washington, D.C., and you control property, that is because it's really, we have rights to pursue, a lot of people forget, it's to government should protect the rights to life, liberty, and property. And property is extremely important factor. So they try to eliminate abilities to do property. They try to take religion from you because that is very important. It keeps you strong as a human being. That you have convictions. They don't want people with convictions. They want government to be religion or find other ways how to replace your beliefs because they want to be weaker. And they want to take your second and rights away because they understand government will always have guns. Bandits, criminals will always have guns. In any society, it's about law-abiding citizens. And this right was given us against tyranny. The most important thing, and animal is foreign and domestic because it is an ultimately voice for women and pioneer American and law-abiding citizens not to be oppressed. So they take all the principle that all of them is a strength of our individual. Education too. So you see what's happening. They want to have you weak and be dependent and then provide you handouts until you become puppet enough. And then their friend is on top, all in the arts, how God wanted to control everyone. Very dangerous, and just became so corrupt, and even Republicans aren't willing to fight these fights, and we have to win it.
Well, you're saying something here that's very important because I think that for a long time, Republicans, when they confront these policies that are coming from the Democrats, they always think that these policies are misguided. The Democrats don't understand how markets work. And even in the Obama years, I would always hear people, Obama doesn't understand this and Obama doesn't understand that. But I think what you're saying is it's not about that at all. The Democrats are trying to create a structure of power in which they have permanent power and they are the oligarchy at the top. And so telling them things like this does not improve economic efficiency, or this is not good for the economy, or we cannot afford to borrow this much debt, those arguments aren't going to get through because it doesn't take account of their motive. It's like telling a guy who's trying to rob the bank, hey, listen, if everybody robbed banks wouldn't have any money. This guy's like, who cares about any of that? I'm here to rob the bank because I stand to benefit from it. So do Republicans need to have a sharper, sort of maybe a clear understanding of power to recognize what they're up against?
That I think exactly then one of strategic and incredible. They've been able to move back legislation and Republican supermajority. And I was state Senate and Indiana. It's still looks like killing that bill, but I don't have time to them. Really, it's from that strategic. They know how to use people's feelings to put class warfare, race warfare. They're very important use of that. And unfortunately, we are not as strategic because I think most Americans don't want to be controlled, and we went the socialists and communists and under all of that. I don't believe where they because frustrated still believe it that we actually be free republic, which is very dangerous too. But I think, we still can get out and show and expose what they're doing. They don't care about poor people. They don't want immigrants like me speak English and run for Congress. They want immigrants to wash their toilets, and give them a handout. So they're going to be lower class, easy to oppress, because poor people are used as a pawns to make some people very rich. There is so much money made by the oligopolies here using poor people, but people are not getting richer. We're not restoring and improving people opportunity to warrant the middle class. They don't want it. They want you to be there because you are easy to control and puppet, and then it's going to be stoppable. And unfortunately, when you get a critical mass of people dependent like that, it's very hard then to overcome. And that's why they want to undermine a lot of principles, including our Constitution, that spreads the power. They out of 16 and 17 medalists did a lot of art to this power. And they were very clever to do it in the beginning of our century.
Very scary stuff, but I'm glad you are there, Victoria, fighting the good fight. Representative Victoria Spartz, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Wonderful. And thank you for freedom fighters like you.
Debbie and I had a New Year's resolution to lose weight, and thankfully PhD Weight Loss came to the rescue. You can see the result for yourself if you're watching on the video section of this podcast. Debbie's lost 24 pounds. I've lost 27. We are now both on maintenance and very happy about it. The program is based on science and nutrition. No injections, no pills, no long hours in the gym, no severe calorie restriction, just good, sound, scientifically proven nutrition. It's so simple. They make it easy by providing 80% of your food at no additional cost. They tell you when and what to eat. And guess what? You can do this without ever being hungry. The founder, Dr. Ashley Lucas, has her PhD in chronic disease and sports nutrition. She's also a registered dietitian. She helps people lose weight and, most important, maintain that weight loss for life. If you're ready to take the big step of losing weight like Debbie and I have, call PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition at 864-644-1900. You can also find them online at myphdweightloss.com. The number again to call, 864-644-1900. I've just made a film called Police State, and everywhere it seems the police state is in the news. Now, I have to ask myself, is this some kind of an optical illusion? Is it a case where you make a film about a topic, it's preoccupied your interests, and so you've sort of put on the police state spectacles, and everywhere you look, it's police state, police state, police state, and you're somehow editing out things that are happening that are not related to the police state. But no, I don't think that's it. I think that we are living in a time where the various manifestations of the police state are pushing themselves forward, are advancing. We all realize that the film is what puts it all together and actually brings it home visually, intellectually, emotionally, and in a way that nothing really else can. But here, and I want to go through this in some depth, is an expose in Newsweek of all places. The title, Exclusive: Donald Trump Followers Targeted by FBI as 2024 Election Nears. Now, initially I thought, is this some opinion piece someone is writing about their fear? No, this is apparently a news article that uses as its sources people high up within the FBI and within the other police agencies of government. And they also talk to other people who are analysts who have been following what's going on inside the FBI and inside the Biden regime. And the whole picture is chilling because now they're coming out and saying explicitly, yeah, one of our main targets is MAGA. It's Trump supporters. And we're going to be focusing on them in the lead up to the 2024 election. So I'll give you my bottom line, which is that I think this is the police state kind of coming out into the open. This is the police state basically saying, listen, we are surveilling you. In the past, the police state had to hide and disguise itself and say things like, well, we're above politics. We're not interested in people's ideology. We're not interested in political convictions. We're not interested in peaceful demonstrations. We're not targeting people per se. We're targeting crimes and potential crimes. So if you're plotting to rob the bank, if you're plotting to overthrow the government, if you're plotting to assassinate somebody, well, yeah, you should rightly be in the crosshairs of the FBI. But now they're saying we are looking at ideology, we are looking at opinion, we are looking at people, and we are looking at a specific group that just happens to be perhaps the most powerful force in the Republican Party. So you have one party under Biden using the police agencies of government to explicitly and publicly and consciously target the other party, or at least a large faction of that party, perhaps the predominant one. Here's the headline. The federal government believes the threat of violence and major civil disturbances around the 2024 election is so great that it has quietly created a new category of extremists that it seeks to track and counter Donald Trump's army of MAGA followers. Now just digest that statement alone. The Trump, not just Trump, but Trump followers are now going to be, quote, tracked and countered by the FBI. And this is a whole escalation, and we have to recognize it as such. The challenge for the FBI, the primary federal agency, is to pursue and prevent what it calls domestic terrorism. I like the what it calls domestic terrorism, because even Newsweek now realizes that a lot of what they're calling domestic terrorism isn't maybe domestic, but it's not terrorism in any meaningful sense of the word. Let's back up for a second and let's recall what terrorists are. Well, let's look at the people here and around the world who are terrorists. The IRA, Think of groups in other countries that dress in military uniforms. They bomb buildings, they bomb banks, they take hostages. You see any of that happening in the United States? Has that occurred on the part of Trump or the MAGA followers? Not at all. Nothing like it. Or in America, we had terrorism. We had domestic terrorism in the 1960s. Let's look at somebody that I've debated and that Debbie and I have gotten to know, even if somewhat distantly, Bill Ayers. Well, Bill Ayers and his now wife, Bernadine Dorn, were domestic terrorists. What did that mean? They went underground. They hid from the police. They collected ammunitions and explosives. They made lists of targets, like we're going to bomb the Pentagon, we're going to bomb certain federal buildings. And they had justifications for it, of course, and terrorists always do. In the case of Bill Ayers, it was like, listen, the U.S. government is perpetrating more violence in Vietnam, so we are entitled to use violence here at home to stop that machine. We are allies of the North Vietnamese. So there was a sort of an ideological framework behind this, but nevertheless, this is the MO of terrorist groups. And this MO is completely absent from anything happening with the MAGA movement, and yet the MAGA people are being targeted, are being tagged, are being followed, are being tracked as terrorists. So this is a vicious police state tactic being used by the Biden administration. And I'm not imagining it. It's not a product of me putting on a police state lens. The movie may be coming, but the police state to some degree is here. Mike Lindell has a passion to help you get the best sleep of your life. He didn't just stop with the MyPillow pillow. He also created the Giza Dream bed sheets. Now, Debbie and I have been using these sheets, and we love them. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep, which is crucial for our overall health. Mike found the world's best cotton called Giza. It's ultra soft and breathable, but also extremely durable. And Mike's latest deal, sale of the year for a limited time, 50% off the Giza Dream Sheets, marking prices down as low as $29.98 depending on the size. Go to MyPillow.com and a promo code Dinesh. There you'll find this offer, but also deep discounts on all the MyPillow products, the MyPillow robes, the mattress topper, the towel sets, and so much more. The number to call, 800-876-0227. Again, 800-876-0227, or go to MyPillow.com. Don't forget to use the promo code DINESH Dinesh. I'm continuing my discussion of this Newsweek expose, which reveals how the Biden regime is targeting MAGA and Trump supporters as domestic terrorists as the 2024 election gets closer. Newsweek spoke to over a dozen current or former government officials who specialize in terrorism in a 3-month investigation. And what you have in this investigation is the FBI now openly admitting, top officials of the FBI, that MAGA is itself a potential terrorist category, and they are viewing it as such. I mean, think about it. To the degree that you and I identify as MAGA, we are already right now under the surveillance, under the eyes, under the gaze of the FBI. I mean, in my case, I assume it to be true. I've just made a film about it. Hey, by the way, Elon Musk just tweeted out the film last night and said that the FBI needs I forget his word, thoroughgoing or systematic rebuilding or reconstruction. And my trailer, which is up on my X feed, which had, I think it was 3.4 million views, is now, honey, what is it, like 30 million views? 30 million views as of this morning. I mean, that outstripped even my expectations. And 40 million views, it's some ridiculously high number, but it's great. And thank you, Elon Musk, for helping get this word out, because the trailer alone is a kind of preview of what we are, of the police state that is encroaching on us. So thank you for helping me to push that word out. And by the way, if you haven't gotten your tickets to the film, I hear there are some people who are now talking about, buying out all the tickets in the theater and taking their groups and so on. I mean, I encourage this, but I think it also means that you need to get your tickets now. Don't wait till the last minute. PoliceStateFilm.net is so that you have the Newsweek expose, which is a decent news report, but then you have my film, which really puts brings the force to this topic. Well, according to Newsweek, the FBI has been mobilized by all these statements by prominent figures in the Biden regime about the danger posed by MAGA, starting with Biden himself. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans are a threat to the very soul of this country. MAGA Republicans aim to question not only the legitimacy of past elections, but elections being held now and into the future. Now, no one is questioning elections being held now or in the future without knowledge of what are the measures being taken to secure the vote and make sure that the votes are legitimate. Obviously, if there are no guardrails in place, obviously, if there's blatant cheating, obviously, if there are manifest and manifold opportunities to cheat, people are going to go, wait a minute, that's not a fair election. And it's almost like Biden is saying that to say that either about 2020 or 2022 or 2024 is somehow to make put yourself into a terrorist category. I mean, how reprehensible, how disgraceful is that? Similar statements from the Homeland Security Advisor Liz Sherwood Randall, Attorney General Merrick Garland. Attacks by domestic terrorists are attacks on all of us collectively aimed at rending the fabric of our democratic society and driving us apart. So apparently, we are driving people apart, not him. The police state tactics being used by the regime are not divisive. Those are, in fact, unifying. And I suppose in some twisted way, if you think about it from the police state mentality and also from a socialist or communist mentality, if you shut down all dissident voices and you lock up everybody who is not sort of with the program, you do have a unified society. Why? Because you've created one. You have thinned out everybody else. You've taken them out of the picture. Their votes don't count. You've locked them up. So this is, as I say, scary stuff. And evidently the FBI has added a new category to the groups that it monitors. People who are, quote, in furtherance of political or social agendas. So what you have here is defining terrorism down. Terrorism used to be you're plotting or you're doing actual violence. Then they decided, well, we're not going to call it terrorism necessarily. We're going to call it extremism, because extremism could lead to terrorism, could lead to violence. And what's extreme? Well, the beauty of extremism as a label is we get to define the center. We say the center is right here. And so if you're not close to the center, you're extreme. Extreme, of course, from our point of view. We're not extreme. We're actually the center itself. We define what's extreme. So this is a manipulation of language. It's a manipulation of political categories. And then we say anybody who's trying to further a political and social agenda, basically all our political rivals, all our political opponents, they're the extreme ones. They're the ones who threaten democracy. So, in other words, you redefine democracy as not a choice between two parties, which is occurring within democracy. Rather, you redefine democracy so that your political opponents are against democracy, and you are somehow, or at least you have proclaimed yourself, the great defender of democracy. Guys, with the new movie Police State coming out this month, this is the time to check out my Locals channel. By the way, if you become an annual subscriber, all the movies up there and the new movie Police State are free. You can stream and watch them as often as you want. Now, I post a lot of exclusive content on Locals, content that is sometimes censored on other social media platforms. So on Locals, you get Dinesh Unchained, Dinesh Uncensored. You can also interact with me directly. I do a weekly live Q&A every Tuesday at 8 p.m. No topic is off limits. I've also uploaded a bunch of cool films to Locals, including, by the way, 2,000 Mules. There are documentaries, feature films, my films, also films by other independent producers, and more going up as time goes on. Now, you know about the new film Police State. I'll be giving you the inside scoop on Locals and also posting exclusive footage there. If you're an annual subscriber, like I mentioned, you can stream and watch for free. So check out the channel. There's no charge to check it out. It's dinesh.locals.com. I'd love to have you along for this great ride. Again, it's dinesh.locals.com. I'm continuing my discussion of the Newsweek expose that Trump and Trump followers, the so-called MAGA movement, are now explicitly being targeted, tracked by the FBI. What a pass we have come to as a country, and you see the extreme urgency of this film, Police State, which blows the lid off of all of this. Now, Newsweek says that Trump and MAGA are not mentioned explicitly in the FBI documents. But they say government insiders concede that, yes, that is the group we are talking about. Quote, "What other name could we use?" asks one FBI officer who speaks with Newsweek and defends what he says is merely a record-keeping change. And he says, so yes, in practical terms, it refers to MAGA, though the carefully constructed language is wholly nonpartisan. MAGA is the target. We won't say that MAGA is the target because then we're going to have to explain how one side of the political aisle could possibly be identified as an FBI target. Isn't this straight out police state tactics? So they go, let's not call it that, but everybody knows it's that. We certainly will clearly communicate within the FBI that it is that. So here's another senior intelligence official who requested anonymity. "We've crossed the Rubicon. Trump's army constitutes the greatest threat of violence domestically, politically. That's the reality and the problem set. That's what the FBI as a law enforcement agency has to deal with." Now, this statement requires a lot of evidence and backing. And where is that evidence? Where is the evidence that Trump supporters constitute the greatest threat of domestic violence? Is it because they have done the greatest amount of domestic violence? No. Is it because you have manuals and statements from them that they are planning to or intend to do domestic violence? No. So what is the basis for the statement? To my knowledge, there is no basis for it at all. This is a case where they simply declare it to be true. Biden says it's true. Merrick Garland says it's true. Christopher Wray says it's true. And then all the groupies, all the apparatchiks are then moved into line to act as if it were true. The FBI does something that is terminology within the FBI. It's called an assessment. An assessment is a formal term. It's not the usual, I made an assessment of as I crossed the street. No, this is a file. An assessment means you open up a file. We're doing an evaluation. We're studying a particular phenomenon. And basically, you don't do that unless you suspect wrongdoing. You suspect that somebody is going to commit a crime, going to unleash some kind of act of violence, and now you're going to look further at them, look further at their background. It's a form of domestic surveillance, of domestic spying, and essentially the FBI is announcing through Newsweek that we are now escalating our assessments of MAGA and Trump supporters. Now, how should we respond to this? I don't think we should respond to this with any kind of, a little bit of rational trepidation or caution is in order. And I'm very conscious of that. I mean, I don't send out a text or even make a private comment in a way, except recognizing that, you know what? Somebody could be trying to record this. Somebody could be trying to make something of this. So we're not going to give them ammunition. They have already told us they're looking for it. And so this is we got to say, it's not, at one time I would have found it so preposterous if you had talked about, an American KGB, an American Stasi, which was the East German secret police, or the hated and infamous Gestapo under the Nazis. But we do have a Gestapo now in the United States, and it is called the Federal Bureau of Investigation. One of the really striking things to me about rereading Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago is I am seeing more direct parallels between the Gulag and our own society than I did when I first read the work. Because I thought that, look, Solzhenitsyn is talking about a full-fledged police state. We are not there yet, so it is only by some stretching, or at least looking to the future, maybe with foreboding, that we can see the connection. But no, the connection is actually much more vivid and much more, frightening. He starts off by talking in this section about Criminal Code of 1926, and he talks about a single article of all the 140 articles, and this is called Article 58. Now, this is very analogous, by the way, to how the Biden regime has taken single clauses in the federal laws, the huge accordion book of federal laws, like obstruction of justice or even obstructing a federal proceeding, and then use that as a battering ram to go after people and lock them up for long periods of time for what, if someone did this on the left, would be just a complete nothing. So here says Solzhenitsyn, he's reading he's now putting forward the Article 58, propaganda or agitation containing an appeal for the overthrow, subverting, or weakening of the Soviet power, and the dissemination or preparation or possession of literary materials of similar content. And Solzhenitsyn says, in peacetime, the minimum penalty is set for this, but there's no upper limit. There's no maximum penalty. In other words, you could go to prison for life. And then he tells a vignette that's become very famous from the Gulag Archipelago. He talks about a district party conference that is underway in Moscow province. At the conclusion of the conference, he writes, a tribute to Comrade Stalin was called for. Of course, everyone stood up, just as everyone had leapt to his feet during the conference at every mention of his name. Here's Solzhenitsyn being a little sarcastic. Just mention Stalin, everyone jumps up with enthusiasm. The small hall echoed with stormy applause, rising to an ovation for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And then he says people were getting a little tired. Their palms were getting sore. Their raised arms were already aching. The older people were panting from exhaustion. And he goes, the whole thing was becoming kind of silly because even people who liked Stalin, even with people who adored Stalin, found this a little ridiculous. However, says Solzhenitsyn, asking the key question, who would dare to be the first to stop applauding? He says the secretary of the district party committee, in other words, the top communist in attendance, could have done it. He was standing on the platform. He had called for the ovation. But, says Solzhenitsyn, he was a newcomer. He had taken the place of a man who had been arrested. He was afraid. He looked around the room. He could see that the NKVD men, the secret police, were standing in the hall applauding and watching to see who quit first. And then he says in this small, obscure hall, the applause went on 6, 7, 8 minutes. And he goes, now it's a problem. People were really getting exhausted, but everyone was scared. Nobody wanted to be the first to stop applauding. And then he says, after 11 minutes, when the whole thing had gotten totally out of hand, the director of the paper factory, this is the venue for the event, assumed a businesslike expression and sat down in his seat. And he says, and oh, a miracle took place. Where had the universal, uninhibited, indescribable enthusiasm gone? To a man, everybody else stopped dead and sat down. They had been saved. The squirrel had been smart enough to jump off his revolving wheel. This is the beauty of Solzhenitsyn's writing. And he says that was, however, how they discovered who the independent people were. Who's they? The Soviet authorities. This is how they figured out these are the troublemakers, the people who sort of lead the group, the first person to sort of get off the treadmill. And that was how they went about eliminating them. That same night, the factory director was arrested. They easily pasted 10 years on him on the pretext of something quite different. Again, think of the similarity here. We can't get somebody for this. Let's go get him for that. Here's Letitia James. I want to get Trump on a criminal offense. I can't get him. Didn't do anything really. All right, that's okay. We'll get him on the civil charge. We'll try to destroy his companies. So you find a different pretext. But after he had signed Form 206, the final document of the interrogation, his interrogator reminded him, don't ever be the first to stop applauding. So this is the lesson of the police state. And that is that everything that you think and feel gets suppressed. You are supposed to have artificial feelings. If you have a grocery store, and I mentioned this in a different context from Václav Havel, you got to put up a big sign, workers of the world unite. It's a false slogan. It doesn't represent your thoughts. You're doing it for a completely different reason, really as a mark of fear. You're doing it to say, I'm a conformist. I'll follow the authority. And similarly here, applause is not because you genuinely internally love Stalin. It's rather that this is what is expected of you. And if you don't go along, there are eyes looking at you. Now, today, those eyes may be electronic. In the days of Solzhenitsyn, it was just a bunch of guys standing in the back room. But either way, it is a powerful message to the citizenry. Don't take us on because we have ways of dealing with you. We have ways of disposing of you. Don't be the first to stop applauding.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.